Unrest Podcast.
Welcome to the Unrest Podcast. I'm Madeleine Green. My girl Caitlin is covered up with work for a few weeks and I have no life, so it will just be me for a few episodes, but I promise to continue to bring you guys the most amazing real life haunts. Make sure if you haven't already subscribed to the Unrest Podcast that you do so. We would love that. And guess what? Thanksgiving is this Thursday. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all. You'll never know how much it means to have so many amazing followers who love spooky stories just as much as we do. So just know we are so thankful for each and every one of you listening right now. Just going to jump right into this week's real life haunt. Jessica shares some very interesting stories about experiences she's had over the years, starting with an experience she had after the loss of a child. So this is a trigger warning for anyone. The first story that she does share involves the loss of a child. Take a listen.
So my name is Jessica. I saw my very first ghost, not to sound crazy, but I saw my very first ghost when I was 7 years old going down the road, and there was this woman just standing in the middle of the road. I thought my mom was going to run her over because I thought she was a real live woman, and so I yelled at my mom. I was like, "Mama, watch out," and when I turned around to look in the rearview glass, she was gone. Like there was nobody there at all, and that really kind of just sparked my interest in everything. So, I'm 29 now, and I'm super, super interested in all the history, everything that leads to that stuff, tapping into, because I do believe that there are things afterwards, like, once we kick the bucket, but I want to know what, and I've been lucky enough to see, some of that, but it's just fascinating to me. So when I was 19 years old, I became pregnant. I was a single mom. And I was working, I was doing all the things, I was, had to make money, right? And so I went into labor about a month before I was supposed to. And my daughter and I, we started having complications when I started laboring. Long story short, they wound up taking her for an emergency C-section because things just got real hairy real fast. And when she came out, maybe about 30 minutes after she was born, she went into cardiac arrest. They worked on her for about 45 minutes. They were able to get her heart back beating, but they weren't able to bring her back completely. 3 days later, I took her off of life support because she was just deteriorating very, very quickly. I had an emergency C-section, and with a C-section, you can't really sit up on your own. You can't roll over on your own. It's just rough. They cut you dang near in half. So funeral home came and picked her up and everything. That whole entire situation was an absolute nightmare. But fast forward to me getting home, and this was maybe 4 days after she was born. Came home, and my mom, bless her heart, God love her, she slept in my bed with me for a week after she'd been born. But, right around a week's time, she was like, I can't keep sleeping in bed with you. You're a grown woman. And so she started sleeping in her bedroom. I had gotten home from doing, just trying to keep my mind busy. Came home, lay down, went to sleep. And I wasn't taking any pain medication at that point other than Tylenol and ibuprofen. Wasn't taking any anxiety medication, depression medication, nothing. I was just there. So came home and I went to bed, and I woke up, and my room was always the hottest room in the house. I woke up because I was freezing cold, and it smelled like absolute roadkill in my bedroom. And so, again, with the C-section, I couldn't sit straight up. I was just kind of planted on my bed. When I opened my eyes up, everything was very blue in my room. It was a light blue. And I was like, okay, what is this? And then I opened my eyes up even more, and the smell was it was just horrendous, the hottest roadkill on the hottest day. When I opened my eyes, there was this woman. She was floating above me. And when you go underwater, your hair is just kind of floating all around you. Her hair was floating all around her, and I remember being oh my God, what the hell? You know what I mean? And I thought it was so weird because her whole body was the whole length of my body. She was floating just above me. And it was weird to me that her hair was floating, but her dress that she had on was gravity was pulling it down towards me. And she was the ugliest thing I have ever seen in my life. She had gnarled teeth. She had spit like all in her mouth. Her fingernails were so long and like almost curled over. And her fingernails were, I will never forget how dirty her fingernails were. And she smelled just like so bad. And I've always been taught, I don't know where you're from, but I'm from like the deep South. So everybody's always said, if you ever see anything that's like just tripping you out, just say in the name of God, leave. Or you can ask it to tell you what it wants. And I was like, in the name of God, what do you want? And again, I couldn't move because my stomach, had been cut. And I was just planted there. And when she opened her mouth, she never stopped smiling at me. And she said, do you want your baby? And in my mind, I was like, well, yeah, I want my baby. And then I told her, well, yes, I want my baby. And she leaned her hand down to me. And I started to pick my hand up. That was the only thing I could move. I started to pick my hand up to go to her hand. And then I kid you not, it was like something slammed my whole entire body back and was like, there's no way that has your baby. You're crazy if you think that has your baby, And so then I squeezed my eyes shut and I was just like, in the name of God, leave, in the name of God, leave, over and over and over again. And then I kid you not, almost instantly, the entire room got warm again. The smell went completely away. And that blue like glow that just illuminated my entire bedroom was gone. The only thing that was there was like my glow in the dark clock. And I still couldn't roll over or move or anything. So I had to like inch myself to the bed to sit up so I could drink some water. But there's no way that wasn't real. And even now, all these years later, my daughter, she would be 9 now. All of these years later, I'm still like, it chills me to my core to think about what would have happened if I had touched that thing's hand. I've spoken with a lot of other folks that are into paranormal stuff, and all of them, some of them say that it was a demon. Some of them say that it was sleep deprivation. Some of them say that, there's psychological things that'll lead you to different outcomes, if you have a loved one that passes away. But with my research and with some people that have kind of helped guide me, the biggest thing, the most like common thing that I have found that pretty much matches like the way that it looked is the old hag. In the research that I've done, it's something that, comes and it sits on top of your chest. She didn't sit on top of me. She was just floating above me. But it's something that comes and sits on top of your chest. And, it's been associated with sleep paralysis. But, people also believe it's a demon. But I don't truly know what it was. I just know I don't ever want to see it again. So after that happened, it was probably, I went back to work about 2 weeks after she was born. And so I had been at work all day long, and I came home and took a shower, and I laid down again to go to sleep, and I slept in the bed completely by myself. Same thing. I woke up not because there was a smell in the room, but because it was so cold. And when I woke up, my entire bed, and it was a full-size bed, my entire bed was surrounded with people like standing all around it. And it was like the room was just packed with people just standing all around it. And the blue like glow was there again. And it was so, not to sound crazy, but it was so like, have you ever been on a super busy bus or like a super busy plane or anything? It's just super loud. That's what it sounded like. And I closed my eyes immediately because I was afraid that thing was going to come back. And I was just like, in the name of God, leave. But I couldn't move again. I couldn't move quickly because of the C-section. I just remember like opening up my eyes and being like, God, I hope they're gone. And I opened them up and they were gone. Thankfully, nobody was, surrounding the bed or anything. That was pretty scary, because I was seriously anticipating that creepy thing coming back and, being over me. We moved to that house after my parents divorced, and my brother, he was down in the living room one time. He was asleep. He woke up because the TV just kept changing channels, and he thought like, my mom was, standing in the staircase, like changing the channels or something. He hollered at her to ask her what she was doing, and she didn't answer because she was still in the bed. She wasn't changing the channels. And so when he went to get up to go to the staircase to see, if she was at the staircase, he said that he saw something like short and black run like from one side of the living room to the other side of the living room. And there was a time, I was checking on him, and I was maybe 11 when this happened. He had always told me that he felt like there was a little boy that would like live in the house, that would be in the house that I guess was departed. But he never said that he saw anything at that point. I poked my head in, and there was like this It had like red hair, and it had, just a weird, like almost sadistic smile. And it was wrapped around him. He was laying on a pallet on the floor watching TV. And it was just like wrapped around him, almost like a cat would be wrapped around, like, a warm blanket or something. And it had green eyes. And like, he would tell me too that he had seen, that my brother had seen, like a tall man with a black hat. And he would be like as tall as like the door frame, and my mom would see him too. I grew up and I moved out and, became successful and did all the things. Now that I've got my own house, it was pouring down rain. It was probably about 4 or 5 o'clock. It was pouring down rain in the afternoon, and it was raining so hard that, like, those November rains where it's just pouring down rain and it makes everything outside dark. It was one of those, and I kid you not, I was actually researching how to clean headstones without damaging them, and I had that on the TV on YouTube while I was deep cleaning my house. And my back door that nobody ever uses, somebody started beating on my back door. So I jumped like 10 feet out of my skin. And I went ahead and I went to the back door, and it was this little bitty old lady. And she was standing out there in the pouring down rain, and I didn't have a roof on that back porch. And so I just grabbed her and, pulled her in. And I was like, what are you doing out here? Why are you at my back door? And it's raining. And like, where's your people at, And she wanted to let me know that she was my neighbor. She wanted to let me know that a package had been delivered to her house, and it was, my package. And so she wanted to bring it over. She's soaking wet, standing in my living room. And I went ahead and I opened up the package. She was telling me, the history of the area and everything. And she was saying that it had been rumored that, back in the day, people would just like steal headstones. And I don't know if she saw the headstone cleaning thing on my TV or not. But she was saying that, people would steal headstones and they would like line their flower beds with them, or they would, whatever, make steps with them, whatever. I was opening up the package, and my grandma had just recently passed away, right? So I was opening up the package. Someone had sent a wind chime in her honor to us. So that's what that was. And the room that she passed away in was on the other side of my house. I opened up the package, and then in that room, nothing was in that room. Because when she passed away, we just cleared it out, and we just didn't really know what to do with the room afterwards. Something fell off of a dresser in that room. And in that room was like all the way on the other side of the house by itself, right when all this stuff was happening. And she always told me, because like I'm very particular about, the cleanliness of my house and things being in their own particular spots and everything. She always told me, when she did kick the bucket, she was like, I'll come back and I'll just throw stuff off of the dressers. And it's like, okay, I see you, And I feel like, people that are open to that stuff, they don't brush it off as much, I do think that I think that everyone is predisposed to be able to like tap into other parts of different realms. Not to sound crazy, because I know that does sound crazy, but I do think that other people are. I think that everyone is capable of that, but I think at some point people start to just kind of suppress that a little bit. Whether it's like a parent telling them, no, you didn't see that didn't happen, or it's society being like, you're crazy. You just need to get away from this thought process and go towards something else. I think that everybody eventually, they either find the niche that they want to be in and they go that way, and they stay receptive to stuff. And I know in my experience, it was always, everyone in our family has always been just like, as long as you're not hurting anyone and you're not hurting yourself, go do what makes you happy. And so it was never, I don't ever remember anyone ever telling me or my brother or my mom or my grandma or anyone else in the family that is capable of, or at least open-minded to things like this. I don't ever remember anyone telling us you can't or you shouldn't. My daughter, she is 5 now, and it's crazy, because she doesn't remember it now. But when she was little, she was, I don't know, she was probably about 2-3 years old. She's always been very articulate. She was talking to me about her great-grandmother, and she never met her great-grandmother, neither did I. But one of the distinct features that her great-grandmother had was very red hair. Like, she was just known for her fiery red hair. And she climbed up in my lap one day and she said, Mama, you know anybody named And I said, well, no. And she said, well, I do. She's got bright red hair. And I was like, really? And she was like, she keeps talking about Pawpaw, and Pawpaw was her husband. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I made the connection. I was like, okay. And she went to get down out of my lap, and then she came right back up and she said, Mama, hold on. And I was like, okay. And she said, who is, and then she stopped. And I was like, who's who? And she started to describe her deceased grandfather, my husband's dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I never met him either. But she was telling me that he had red hair and he was really, really tall. And it was crazy because she was like, what are those little round brown things that are like cakes? And I was like, I don't know. And she was like, they're like Debbie's. And like, I don't let my kids eat Debbie cake. She'd never heard about that at all. But she said, they're like Debbie's. I was like, a Debbie cake? And she said, yeah, like a Debbie cake. He loves to eat those. And I was like, what the hell? Okay, I'm going to have to pick somebody's brain in the family because I don't know anything about this man. She was like, okay, well, I got to go, Mom. And I was like, okay. And she ran off to her playroom. And she was still in there, like, steadily talking and laughing and, like, pointing and just doing all the things. And I was like, bro, are you in my house right now? And so after she went to bed, I was talking to my husband about it. And I was like, what is the correlation between your dad and Little Debbie cakes? And he was like, oh, he loved fudge rounds. He used to eat Debbie cakes all the time. Like, he would keep, boxes of Debbie cakes with him all the time. And, if he was working on cars or out fishing or hunting or whatever, that was like the go-to snack, was the fudge rounds. I was just like, well, I'll be damned. Would you look at that? Because it's such a personal thing for him that I never would have known. And she obviously definitely would have known. She's never even been exposed to Debbie cakes. My grandma, she passed away in our house. Was maybe less than 2. She was almost 2. We had pictures, of my grandma and everything. And there was one day, it was like right in the middle of 2020, so we were just like stuck at home, just like looking through pictures and playing board games and kicking it old school. She found a picture of my grandma and she picked it up and she was like petting her face and everything. And she said, that's Nikki. And we never called my grandmother by her first name. You know what I mean? Like, her name was Baba. And I said, what? And, again, like, she's a super articulate little kid. She said, that's Nikki right there. And I was like, okay, how do you know? And she was like, well, she told me. And she was like, she doesn't look like that anymore, though. And for her to know that that was her name, and nobody, like, even now to this day, I still call her Baba when I talk about her in conversation. I would never address that woman as Nikki, and no one else would. And so for her to just know that, it was just like, girl, what? My oldest daughter, every year at her birthday, we go and we'll take one stone and we will put, like, it's just a special pretty stone. We'll put it in a creek that's right down the road from our house. There's a playground, and it's an old, just dilapidated playground. It's within walking distance of this creek. And so every year after we do that, we always walk up to the playground and we'll swing on the swings, or we'll slide down the slides, just do whatever. And we'll stop at that playground, pretty regularly, even when it's not her birthday. And like my kids know about their older sister, but like there's no like shrine in the house to her. We don't like have a birthday cake for her. We don't, do all those things. And I also only talk to them about her if they bring her up to me, because I don't ever want them to feel like they have to compete over her memory or anything. There's never any I don't ever bring her up unless they want to talk about her. And even then, it's very like, it's normally just me answering their questions and stuff. So we had stopped at the playground at one point. And I know it probably sounds crazy, but every time I would get on the swing set, and I'm a full-grown woman, but I'll get out there and play like the best of them. I'll get on the swing set every time. And that is when I feel the closest to all of my kids, is when I'm swinging on that swing. I feel like all of them are right here and like in this form with me, But I've never told anyone that. We were swinging. I was swinging with my kids, having a good time and everything. And it almost like, every time I'm on those particular swings, it almost brings tears to my eyes, because I feel like my oldest daughter's presence along with my other kids' presence so, so, so hard. So we finished up at the playground and everything, and I felt it just like super strong that day, but I didn't say anything. When we came home and we were playing outside, my 5-year-old, she came up to me and she said, Mom, do you know what I did today? And I was like, well, I don't know. What'd you do? And she said, I was playing on the swings with, and then she said, my oldest daughter's name. And she was like, Mom, she loves to swing. And I was like, well, what? What did you just say? And she was like, she loves to swing, Mom. She was like, every time we go to the park, she's there. And I had never said anything like that to anybody. Like, that had always been something that I had kept inside myself because I felt I was afraid someone would be like, well, she's crazy. But homegirl over here was just like, yeah, Mom, she loves to swing, you know, and I'll never forget her being so serious about that. You know, she was just so, like, telling me the sky's blue or the trees are blowing in the wind. It was just like, just one more thing that happened in the day. I do believe that there are things that are out of our control. You know what I mean? And I don't think that anyone should ever play with fire. Like I said, I'm not a religious person, but I do feel like one of the best pieces of advice anyone has ever given me has been, if you are ever in a tight situation like that, like, you know, you're seeing something that's just really freaking you out, just to say in the name of God, leave. And in my experience, that has always made whatever, you know, I was dealing with go away. I would tell them too that they need to be respectful, and they need to pay attention to their mental health. They don't need to be messing with any kind of fire whenever they are drinking or messing with any kind of drugs or anything, because I feel like that's when people are more susceptible to bad things, trying to get in, you know, touch with them. And like with my daughter passing away, I always wonder, you know, if maybe that thing that was looking like a woman, if maybe it had reached out to me because I was in a very weakened state. You know what I mean? And so I would just tell anyone that is interested in it, be interested in it all day long, but also understand that there are probably points of it that are stronger than we all are.
I was just blown away at all the experiences that Jessica and her family had over the years. I really enjoyed the ones about the grandfather and the little Debbie cakes, just because she didn't let her kids have Debbie cakes, but Debbie cakes were a staple in my household. So it was just kind of sweet and innocent, and almost brought a sort of comfort to know that our loved ones live on and sometimes come back to visit us. But I will say, I hope I never get a visit from the entity from her first story. I don't even know really how I feel about it. I'm interested to see what you guys think about that story and maybe what that could possibly have been and why it visited her. And if you have a story that you'd like to share with us, you can reach out to us at the Unrest Podcast at gmail.com. Also, make sure you are following us on all social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and we hope you have a fabulous Thanksgiving. And until next time,
Unrest in peace.